3, 2. No, you don't say 2-1. Remember Wayne's World? Hey, Michael, do you remember Wayne's World?
I do remember Wayne's World. Wayne's World was awesome. I've got a light just like blinding me right below the lens of the camera.
Do you feel like a star?
I don't know.
You look like one.
Are we live yet? I guess we're live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the RetroBlasting Livestream, which happens every other Saturday. Hope everyone out there in cyberspace is doing well.
Sorry.
We're going to, I think Melinda had the audio on her computer on.
Listen, I'm not proficient with computers.
Okay, so we're gonna let some people roll in here and get started. Wanted to give you all some updates on some things. We just got all of the B-roll done today for Chuck Norris Part 2. Tim and I sat in the studio for several hours doing all the B-roll with those martial arts, you know, kicking action figures. So expect that really soon. I know that's been kind of a wait, but it's on the way. I also just ordered the restoration decals for the flag, so the restoration of the flag finale will be happening soon. Some people have been asking me about the toy trade, which started with one of the earlier live streams. Truth of the matter is, we're trying to figure out what to do with that concept because we got a lot of feedback that they liked the idea, but when we actually executed the toy trade, we didn't get a lot of interest. So we're considering other options, so we're going to regroup on that. Probably we're going to ask the patrons for their assistance in figuring out how to execute on that going forward. Thank you, by the way, to all of the patrons who've signed up over the last few weeks. We really appreciate it. It's been very helpful. I know I started a tradition last live stream of calling out a patron, and so I wanted to do that again this week. So I want to call out Dean Hepler. Thank you, Dean, for your support of RetroBlasting and for being a part of all this. Your support on the Patreon page has been very enthusiastic, active. Appreciate seeing you there when we post. Yeah, so today everybody on the page voted for Transformers Generation 1 versus Modern. I guess they liked the concept from the G.I. Joe live stream we did 2 weeks ago. Keep in mind that these live streams are not like our feature videos in the sense that if you don't see your favorite Transformer up here on the table, it's not because you know, we left them out or whatever. This is talking about Generation 1 to Modern. So we're getting a sampling of everything that I have in the various versions of the characters. This is not a comprehensive feature piece. This is just a broader conversation. So if there's anyone in the super chat right now, Melinda will read those questions out as we go. Feel free to chime in at any point because this is a Q&A. It's not just me rambling up here for an hour. So anytime. Do we have anything yet?
Just a lot of hellos. We got a couple people from England.
Oh,
and,
great.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
good deal. Well, I don't know how everyone else got into Transformers, but my experience with Transformers started in 1984 with the original Generation 1, which is represented up here in this corner of the table. Now, Generation 1, as I said in one of my earliest videos, it had some drawbacks in the sense that the toys were beautiful, the toys were very intricately designed, but they were also very fragile. They had a lot of breaking points, and that was really disheartening at times when you had just gotten this toy home and you knew it wasn't like a $2 Star Wars figure and then it breaks and you lose a fist or something and then suddenly your robot looks really wonky. And then they moved into, and I'm jumping ahead a lot because I know there was Generation 2 and then Beast Wars and all that kind of stuff, but I'm talking about when they finally did a good classic reincarnation of the ARC crew from the original miniseries. They jumped into what's affectionately known as CHUG, which is an acronym for Classics, Henkei, Universe, Generations, so CHUG. And that is Hasbro's more modern take on the classic characters with more modern vehicle alt modes and things like that. And that is represented right here in the middle of the table, so you can kind of start to get a direct comparison between the two. These guys were mostly more, they're 100% plastic. There's no die cast on them except for the screws. They were durable and they were more fun to transform, I felt, because they were so durable. Some of them were like crunch puzzles. They weren't, you know, so precise like the original G1. but the robots had more articulation. They were more durable, and that I just said is that you could, they could drop off a table and it wasn't a disaster. And when they turned into their vehicles, that's where things kind of fell apart, because the G1s, their robot modes could be a little dicey, but their vehicle modes were precise. I mean, when you had them in vehicle mode, they looked exactly like the model of the vehicle that they were trying to depict. And if someone walked into your room and didn't know it was a Transformer, they might think it was just a model car. The Chug series, they aired on the side of a cool-looking robot, which is very much an action figure with all of its ability to move and pose. But their vehicles had plastic wheels with a lot of plastic chaff on them, so they don't roll very well. Sometimes you can't get the wheelbases correct. And again, like I said, they were modern vehicles. So take Blue Streak, aka Silver Streak. We all know that he turns into a 1983 Datsun 280ZX. Well, the Chug version turned into a Nissan 350Z. So they were updating the vehicles, and it was not even officially licensed. They kind of depicted vehicles without, violating copyright. So, Bumblebee is not he's not a Volkswagen Beetle. He's actually some kind of hatchback, some sort of modern, almost looks like a Subaru WRX or something. Yes.
So I have a bunch of questions now.
Well, yeah, go for it.
Okay, so why didn't Hasbro make RC?
That's a good question why Hasbro didn't make RC. I think it had to do with the same philosophy around a lot of other action figure lines at the time. They included a female character in a lot of these shows for the purposes of, I guess, trying to get the girls involved. But then when they actually brought everything to the toy aisle, they quietly left the women out of the manufacturing process. And I know that they've since done a Chug sort of equivalent of RC recently, as a matter of fact, I think within the last 2 or 3 years. Yeah, they didn't do a G1 at the time, that was really disappointing. I was disappointed as a kid finding that out.
What's your favorite Transformer?
My favorite Transformer from a toy perspective is probably going to be a toss-up between Optimus Prime and Wheeljack. Wheeljack is my sentimental favorite because he was the first Transformer I ever had, but I do love the design of Optimus Prime. He was a really durable toy for the most part. He didn't give me a lot of problems until his leg broke off, but as you saw from previous videos, I've since rebuilt him to his former glory. That is my original childhood Optimus right there. In the modern sort of cartoon sense, my favorite was always Cliff Jumper. Cliff Jumper was the one I liked on the cartoon the most. He was the one I dressed up as for Halloween in '84. Yeah, I wish I had photos of that Halloween costume because it was awesome, but apparently I don't. But that would be my favorite outside of the toy line. And he's the one I actually put a lot of effort into. I think this camera's working. This is my Chug Cliff Jumper. And originally, and someone will tell me if I'm in the right zone for putting this here. Okay, good. This Cliff Jumper originally was supposed to look like the Chug Bumblebee. They were identical except for repaints. The Classics Bumblebee has more of the traditional Bumblebee face. But Cliff Jumper, I changed the face so that I found a customizer. That's the great thing about Transformers collecting, is that you can get all of these different third-party parts and kits to subtly change these characters to look closer, because Hasbro likes to cut corners these days. And so I found a Cliff Jumper upgrade kit from a third party for the Chug Cliff Jumper, which was just a red Bumblebee. Follow that if you can. And so now he looks like this with the the really cool rifle. He's got a unique head. I thought it was a great upgrade to make him finally look like Cliff Jumper should. So that's why I splurged for that. So yeah.
So Venom 75, great band Venom, by the way. Just I doubt that that's where your actual name comes from, but anyway, he says his all-time favorite is Grimlock, and he asks if there is anything that was never made that you would have liked to have seen as a Transformer.
Well, we have Grimlock represented on the table thanks to Melinda. That's Melinda's favorite character is Grimlock.
That's right, because it's the
original G1. I did not spring for any of the Masterpiece or
Which is a shame.
Third-party ones, because they're very expensive and I've been focused on other things. But if there was one that I would have liked to have seen made that didn't get made, it was probably RC. And as a child, I was also disappointed in the end result of the G1 Ultra Magnus, because I was fascinated by that character in the moment, but then when I saw the actual toy, I was kind of like, oh, because I loved Optimus so much, so thinking about a car carrier Optimus was really exciting, but then when I saw the end toy product, I was like, well, I'm not really interested in that, so.
Okay, sorry, I'm also typing people things. So did you, let's see, best websites for a G1 checklist like Rebel Scum and 3D Joe's?
Oh gosh, best websites for a G1 Transformers checklist. You know what? There are some message boards out there that I know of that are really strong. I think one is Transformers or TW 2005 or something like that. I don't frequent those boards a lot, not because I try to avoid them, but just because I've gotten my Generation 1 art crew. I've got the Decepticons and Autobots from that era, which is my wheelhouse, and I have the Dinobots. So I'm kind of in a holding pattern with Transformers at this point. I know that the masterpieces are continuing to trickle out, but we've had to build the studio and check our budget. So I haven't gone in for those because they tend to be very expensive. I have a few here to represent those, and I'll get into those in a minute. But yeah, as far as a checklist, there are a number of websites out there. I think there's one called Cybertron or Cybertronian, or you see, I haven't been around them. I know I know that there is a message board that's very strong called TF 2005 or something like that.
Why does Bumblebee have a jet ski?
Oh, the Bumblebee that came with the Chug line came with a jet ski towed on the back. I think.
Can you, for the people who just joined, re-explain what Chug means?
Oh yeah, Chug. For those of you just joining, Chug is an acronym that's used to describe Hasbro's relaunch of the classic characters, and they went in different lines over a 5 or 6 year period. And so it's Classics, Henkei, which is the Japanese Takara direct imports of these. So Classics, Henkei, Universe, and Generations, what's affectionately known as Chug. And so the Chug Bumblebee and Chug Cliffjumper came with a jet ski accessory. The idea was that transformed into kind of a airlift hovering jetpack that would clip onto his back. It was an added feature. I guess it made him look more like a beachcomber car. I never use it. I never display mine with it because it wasn't in the G1, so I don't use it all that much.
Which third-party Megatron is that?
So this third-party Megatron right here is Apollon from X-Transbots. I got him several years ago, and then I got the repro labels set for him so that he could be liveried to look, like the classic Megatron. This was when we were thinking that an actual Takara MP Megatron that was scaled properly was never going to happen. I know that since they've announced that one has either been made or is being made. But I'm very happy with this guy. I know the camera's a little low, so you probably won't be able to see him except right here, but I'm very happy with him. I think he looks pretty good. He's not great in the gun mode. I'm sure the Takara one, when they develop that, will be better, but I don't really need him in the gun mode. As I've talked about in other videos, turning Megatron into a gun during playtime, he's just a big giant Luger, or sorry, Walther P-38. He's just a giant P-38 sitting there on the table, and it doesn't do you a lot of good. So I always leave him as the robot, and I think that one really looks good, especially compared to the G1. I mean, the G1 Megatron is just really wonky. I mean, he's an abomination.
Do you have any thoughts on Headmasters?
Headmasters. I didn't really get into, if you're talking about the show, I haven't seen the show.
People are asking about both, so.
Oh, the toys and the show?
Yeah.
I've seen the new toys, and the new toys are really strong. Like, I'm very impressed with what Hasbro has done with the Headmasters line, and prior to that, I think it was something called the Titan series or something like that. Both of those lines were really strong. As far as the animated series from the late 80s, early 90s goes, it's rather weird. I plan on sitting down and watching it at some point so that we can talk about it on the RetroBlasting YouTube channel. I haven't done it yet, though. I've got a few more series to get through first, so it might be a little while. And I'm also planning on doing a new Transformers vintage toy feature, because we were very early on in our YouTube library back then and really getting our format down. So I'll be doing a more comprehensive Transformers toy feature for G1 in the near future.
Is that Brawn third party?
Yes, I'm glad you brought this up. So after we got past Chug, we got into the Masterpiece line, which is represented here and here. And mixed into these Masterpiece lines, this was when the fans really stepped up and said, you know what, we're going to try and get some of these characters out that Hasbro and Takara are dragging their feet on. And so that's how Apollon, or Apollyon, however you want to pronounce it, became a reality. And it's also how this Bad Cube Brawny became a reality. I'll put him right here for you to see in the camera. I guess they'll let me know if you can see all of it. But this was a third party right here, like this. Is that good?
Yes.
Okay, cool. This was a third party Brawn, because I don't even think there's been an official Masterpiece Brawn to date. The trick with these third parties is that everybody is taking a chance on whether or not you can get a good quality one. So depending on the company, I have a third-party Huffer. He's from X-Transbots, same company that did this excellent Megatron, but the Huffer didn't turn out as well. This Brawny from Bad Cube, though, is excellent. I mean, he is an excellent Transformer. Looks great. Good. No loose joints. No loose.
Toward the camera a little bit.
No loose engineering. Is that better?
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please yell out, because I'm not really sure where I need to put these things for the camera. So please just yell out. You know, if you need it to move or whatever. But he is a quality toy, and I'm very happy to have him in my collection. He looks like he just integrates right into the Masterpiece line. These four right here are all official Masterpiece from Takara, as are Soundwave, Thundercracker, and Starscream. They're official Takara Masterpiece as well. But Megatron and Brawn are both from third parties. But very well done. Very well done.
Will you do a Jetfire restoration?
I'd be happy to do a Jetfire restoration at some point. I'd need to find one that, you know, requires fixing. You know, the Jetfire was originally a Macross jet, a Macross Veritech fighter, Valkyrie. And they're affectionately known as chunky monkeys by collectors because of their proportions and everything. A lot of them tend to yellow. Some of them actually still have Macross, some of the Jetfires still have Macross logos on them. The earliest ones do. But yeah, I'd be happy to restore a Jetfire at some point. I just need to find one that needs help.
How do you feel the advent of 3D printing will affect the future of Transformer toys and toys in general?
3D printing is going to affect every toy line and toy collector. As I showed you a few live streams ago in the Buck Rogers restoration, all of those spare parts were from a 3D printed service. They were from a guy who's mastered 3D printing to replicate those parts. Now, some of them might have been resin poured. They might not all be 3D printed, but the precision with which you can 3D print parts could probably save a lot of G1 toys. Like, you know, Optimus has the gears in his shoulders that you know, they're made out of that red plastic, and while they don't get super brittle, they can, you know, the teeth can wear down, things like that. Having those kind of parts reprinted to keep your robots functioning would be great. And then, of course, you can create new Transformers from the ground up, as they're already doing with the third parties like Fans Project and Bad Cube and everything like that.
Boba's friend says he has one that needs fixing if you want it.
You have a Jetfire that needs fixing? Message me at retroblasting@gmail. Send me some photographs, and we'll see if we can, you know, we'll see if it's, you know, what do you call it?
Fixable?
Fixable, yes, fixable.
What's the rarest Transformer?
The rarest transformer. For a while, those, what were they called? Sharkticons from the movie. I know those went for very, very high prices. The vintage G1 ones did. My understanding is that now they've been re-released. My buddy Kyle was talking to me the other day, and he's a big Transformers guy, and he said they've been re-released, so the prices have leveled off. In the front corner here, on the your right, is Reflector, and Reflector was a mail away. He was in the original ARC miniseries, the More Than Meets the Eye miniseries from 1984, as one of the Decepticon team members, 3 bots that turn into a camera. He was a mail away only, from what I understand, so I know he's fairly desirable. And then there are variations I've heard about.
Someone says Bumble Jumper is the rarest.
Yes, Bumble Jumper is one of the rarest. He's a mini-con like Brawn and Bumblebee in the G1 right here in the front. Bumble Jumper was a unique car that never became a character on the show. It was just one of those Takara cars that slipped through, and he's very rare. So yeah, Bumble Jumper is probably one of the rarest.
Should Transformers be displayed in robot mode or vehicle mode?
That's really up to the collector. With my masterpieces, when they do get display time, it's very tempting to display them in vehicle mode because they're so perfect. Like, I love the Lancia Stratos that Wheeljack turns into, and I also love the 280ZX that Blue Streak turns into. So I like keeping them in the vehicle modes, but when I display the vintage ones down here, I keep them all in robot mode because it's reflective of the cartoon, so you can see the characters. And also, once they're on their feet, they take up less shelf space. You know, shelf space can be a premium. So, yeah.
Derek Wishman just gave us $15.
Derek, thank you for the donation. Appreciate it.
He asks, is there a Wheeljack toy that has his face that lights up? He always loved how Wheeljack's face blinked when he spoke in the cartoon. I don't know of one where the face lights up. I think there have been some with the light pipe eyes. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, the Chug one right here kind of has the pieces are clear, so that if you shine a light, you know, through it, it kind of glows. I haven't seen one yet that has light piped eyes. Oh yeah, someone's reminding me to use this fancy camera that we have. This Classics, this Chug one right here has the clear eyes. I don't know if that's okay. Good. The clear headpiece is on the side, but I haven't seen one yet that actually lights up. That would be a really cool one. I'd love to see because the Masterpiece one doesn't have that. Yeah, it's just painted eyes. Did you know that Megatron was one of the good guys in the Japanese line?
I knew that in the Japanese line, Megatron was a Man from U.N.C.L.E. pistol, because back in the original Japanese run, they were all disparate toy lines. So I did not know the mythology behind those, because I did not know there was a story behind them. But I knew that he was not affiliated necessarily as a bad guy. He was just this gun that transformed into a robot. Yeah, I knew that.
What was your opinion on Beast Wars Transformers, both the series and the toys?
I was working at Toys R Us when Beast Wars was being sold. To me, Beast Wars was kind of like seeing Star Wars Transformers. Hasbro having animals that are supposed to look like animals, but they really look like robotic animals. It was a little odd. I couldn't figure out what that was about. I know there are some people that really have a love for the Beast Wars TV show. I know that, you know, it was cutting edge CGI at the time, so I salute it for that. I haven't really explored that toy line, but I remember what was it, Optimal Primus or whatever he was called, on the shelves, and some of the others, but I didn't really buy into them because I was trying to save money for college.
Do you have any of the combiners or special teams?
Yes. In the grand tradition of getting up in the middle of a live stream, I will show you the combiner that I do have. I have pieces of another combiner. I have pieces of Superion, but the one that I have here is a classic, so let me grab him.
Questions. Okay. How do you clean your G1 toys?
I clean them very carefully. My G1s, I kind of spot clean. I don't know if you'll be able to even see him without me raising this up. And then one of my...
Good. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, good. And then one of my Seekers just fell over, so I had to put him back on his feet.
Did you ever combine Transformers with the smaller toy lines like Mask?
Yes, on occasion I did, because Mask was more in scale. The figures were smaller, so you could more convincingly put them with the Transformers, and the Transformers felt more like giant robots. It was a little less so with G.I. Joe. With G.I. Joe, the Transformers just looked, like Chewbacca. They were just really tall. And I know that G.I. Joe and Transformers had a few exclusive crossovers back in the day, but I was more of a I was more prone to putting them with Mask figures when I had the chance.
Were you a fan of the UK Transformers comic when you lived there as a kid? The comic had a super cool homebrewed storylines going on.
Yeah, I was aware of the Transformers comic book in the UK, and I'm glad that it's actually being reprinted in bound volumes. I'm hoping that I can start digging into that and the classic Marvel series. Tim, who runs the live streams here, he has all of his original Transformers comics from back in the day, all the Marvel US ones. And I was also living in England when the Generation 2 Transformers hit big time. I didn't get any of them, but I remember being very wistful when I saw them in toy stores, because I never had certain characters like Jazz or Blue Streak as a kid, and so seeing them re-released was a big deal.
Are you familiar with the Lucky Draw figures with the gold paint?
I am not familiar with the Lucky Draw figures with the gold paint. What is that all about?
I certainly do not know the answer, but Knight of Ren 789 apparently does. So maybe he will share some information with us.
Yeah. If you put more info in the chat or send me a Gmail, I'd love to learn more about that.
Any hope about reprinting rub-off symbols?
I know that people have been experimenting with the rub sign stickers. I don't know how many have been successfully reproduced at this point. Again, I'm going to take flack for this. I am not a huge fan of the rub signs. As a matter of fact, what I'd really prefer is the pre-rub Transformers, because I just like having the faction symbol as it is. Some of the Transformers that I have do have the rub signs on them, and that's the way the cookie crumbles when you're trying to collect G1 Transformers. That's the problem, actually, with G1 Transformer collecting, is they're all very expensive now, proportionally speaking, and sometimes you have to do a rub sign version, because the authentic pre-rubs, especially ones with Takara copyrights on them, go for much higher prices.
How white should G1 wheelback... Okay, I'm going to start over. How white should G1 wheeljack be? Off-white or eggshell or super white? Give us the Pantone color, please, Michael.
Yeah, wow. I'm going to go to Home Depot to the Bear colored chip section and try and match it up. No, I am of the opinion that he's not pure white. But that's from my own memory as a child with the G1 toy.
He's ecru.
Is that what you'd say? He's ecru?
I have no idea, but I will tell you that Lord Gaelic just gave us $10. No question.
Thank you.
Just a really cool
Wow,
guy.
Thank you for the donation, Gaelic. Appreciate it. Yeah, I would say he's not quite pure white. I would say he's a slight off-white color, just to be safe. I mean, that way in different lighting setups it'll look, however you want it.
Which version of the G1 Ultra Magnus do you like? Plastic tires or rubber tires?
Well, I always like rubber tires just as an aesthetic, but I know that rubber tires have a shelf life. Plastic tires last forever if you don't have it sitting out in a field somewhere. So it's a compromise. I really like rubber tires on the original G1 Transformers. I'm looking at this Devastator right now, and he's got the plastic tires. I understand why they went to those, because the rubber tires are a fail point over time. But as far as authenticity, I kind of like the rubber ones.
Dean Hepler asks, he says, I bought my son a Bumblebee from Transformers the movie. You need a PhD in mechanical engineering to get it to transform. Do you think the modern stuff is too difficult for kids to transform?
Well, that's a great segue. Thank you, Dean, for bringing that up. One of the disadvantages of the Masterpiece line, and Aaron and I were transforming these right before the
very quickly, I might add.
Yes,
quickly
very
as
quickly
possible.
before the live stream setup.
So if anything isn't perfect, just please forgive.
Yeah.
Give us a pass.
The trick with these is that you do have to use the instructions, and they do take 4 times as long as a classic G1 transformer to transform, because they utilize perfect transformation, as they call it. Now, as far as the ones based on the movie, the thing I don't like about those is once you transform them into the robot doesn't really look like anything. It just looks like a mishmash of parts and junk and, you know, shards of metal and whatever. I hate the way the Transformers in the movie look once they're robots. I do not think they're fun to look at. I do not think they're interesting in any way. And I find it very telling that when there's time between movies and Hasbro has to get back to doing Headmasters or Titans or Chug or whatever it is, they're more desirable and they sell better. And then they flood the market with the movie crap, and the movie crap doesn't sell well at all. So that's kind of a bummer.
Have we seen, they want to know if we've seen the Toys That Made Us Transformer episode. A lot of people say it's really good. I want to just go ahead and say that a lot of times when we know we're going to do a live stream or something, we intentionally don't watch something so that we don't, you know, accidentally steal other people's ideas and things like that.
Yeah, we're hesitant until after we've done a feature. So like, for example, we had already done Star Trek of the 80s. So we watched the Toys That Made Us episode all the way up until they started in on Next Generation, and we stopped it. We haven't watched the Next Generation half of that episode because we don't want to accidentally say something or observe our own commentary and then find out that it was subliminally in there from the Toys That Made Us. We really don't want that. As a matter of fact, somebody pointed out to us the other day when they were watching the Star Trek episode of The Toys That Made Us, they thought it was very interesting that The Toys That Made Us was talking about how the toy lines leapfrogged over the movies, and so the movies that were bad had the toy lines and the movies that were good didn't. Well, that was the observation we made, 3 or 4 years ago on our Star Trek video. So people were saying, did they rip you guys off? And we're saying, no, you can't copyright an observation. But some people were led to believe that maybe they had seen our video. So we avoid Toys That Made Us until after we've done the property ourselves.
Several people are complimenting your shirt.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is the Star Trek animated series. I love Star Trek the animated series. I consider it the unofficial 4th season.
Can you repeat our email address? Because I don't want to type it on the chat.
Sure. The email address is retroblasting@gmail.com. retroblasting@gmail.com. If you watch any of our finished videos that aren't live streams, it's always at the end. So you can always find it there.
G.I. Joe episodes with Transformers in them. Do you have any thoughts on those?
Not particularly. I don't have many strong memories of those episodes. I do have memories of the comic books that came out, the G.I. Joe and Transformers comics. My next door neighbor had them. I thumbed through them. I was never the kid that was interested in gimmick crossovers. Like Superman versus Spider-Man. It's like, well, I see Superman and Spider-Man fight other villains and heroes all the time, so I don't really understand the big deal here. But no, I don't really have any strong feelings one way or another on it. I know a lot of people really love the crossover, especially when Hasbro does the Comic-Con exclusive mashup toys, like I think it was a Vamp that looked like Brawn or something like that, with the Baroness that came with it or something, and then there was one that was Sky Striker that looked like Starscream, and that came with Cobra Commander, I think. So yeah, I mean, I know people have a lot of fun with it because it's part of that Hasbro-verse thing. It's not really something I pay a lot of attention to.
Matthew Auclair gave us $250 CA. Is that Canadian? Okay.
Matthew, thank you so much, and thank you so much for being such an active member of our community. We really appreciate it. I recognize Matthew's name.
Me too. I just don't understand how currency works.
Right.
Is there any chance, he wants to know, is there any chance of a Batman toy live show?
I can do that. I can do a Batman toy live show. Yes, that is definitely a possibility.
Next live stream.
Well, the patrons get to vote on the next live stream out of 4 topics. So when you're a patron at any level, you have voting rights on the live stream topic every other Saturday.
Have you considered getting any third-party parts to make that Devastator proportions look more realistic?
I haven't considered getting any parts for the Devastator yet, only because I'm more focused on some other toy lines and getting some other things going. Something's collapsing back in the HQ somewhere. It happens. It's standard. I just hope that whoever it was, that they're okay.
Aaron's dead.
Oh, Aaron's dead. Okay, good.
Are you still Are you still collecting Masterpiece Transformers?
I want to. I want to be collecting more of them. I know that a few of them have come out that I would have really wanted, and some of them are probably getting close to retirement, and I'll have to find them third party. I really want the Lamborghini brothers, Sunstreaker and Sideswipe. I really loved the way that Ratchet and Ironhide turned out. I think they look great. But I'm also waiting. I'm waiting for them to confirm Jazz, because I know there's some third party Jazz versions that are out, but I'd love to get Jazz and Hound. Brawn still really hasn't shown up from what I understand, and an official Huffer would be really great. And I always had an affinity for the toy of Gears. I know that on the cartoon Gears was really annoying, but I liked the toy, and I know that he's probably a long way away from ever being made. So it's a shame that they don't sort of focus and push the G1s out like they should. They seem to be more interested in the Decepticons at Takara and Hasbro than the Autobots, which and the big one that they haven't done for me personally in Masterpiece is Cliff Jumper. When they do that, I'll jump on it, but not yet.
Soulcraft says, hey, Dreamland, I saw Jeff Tate perform Operation Mindcrime this past week, so I had to comment on that really quick. Yeah, Jeff Tate does have the sole rights as part of his settlement from leaving Queensryche to perform Operation Mindcrime in its entirety, and so tell us how it was. I'd be interested to hear how old Jeff is doing there.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, Dreamland is the RetroBlasting podcast, which is run by Melinda and Aaron, and they do podcasts.
Or it was, because Aaron's now dead.
Right, Aaron fell over there, and he might be dead. But they do a. He said he's back. They do a.
He's a zombie now.
They do a podcast almost every week on a different retro topic. So, and Aaron is alive. So if you haven't caught that, you can check that out. We've posted a few of the podcasts on our YouTube channel.
So something weird happened. We had someone, Willie Woodward, gave us $2.
Hey, thanks, Willie. Appreciate it.
And he said, do you think you'd ever cover Cops or Beast Wars?
I can cover Cops right now. Cops I'm planning on doing. I have all the action figures minus a few pilots and vehicles. But I have all the main line from Cops. So I plan to do that, in the near future. Beast Wars is something I don't have one piece of right now. So Beast Wars might be a little ways off, but Cops definitely is on the docket.
Do you have Fortress Maximus?
I do not have Fortress Maximus. However, Tim has Fortress Maximus because I decided that Tim, who's a huge Transformers fan, and he's running our live stream right now, he runs all of our live streams. He was one of the lucky kids who had Fortress Maximus in the 80s. And then, as a lot of kids had happened, the parents got rid of the toys and all that kind of stuff. And so I made sure that he was given an encore Takara Fortress Maximus a few years ago for his birthday. So I know that Tim has one. So it's possible for us to do a Fortress Maximus review in the future.
Do you prefer cartoon-oriented or more detail-oriented in your Masterpiece Transformers?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. I actually prefer more of the G1 toy look to mine. So, for example, this blue streak is actually the more limited. I'll put him over here in the camera. This blue streak is actually the silver streak variant that looks more like the G1 toy, which is right here. I'll try and put them both in there so you can see. Oh, sorry, Braun. the G1 toy, you might not even be able to see him. They're both all silver.
That's good.
They're both all silver. And that's what I wanted out of my G1 or my Masterpiece. So I went and got the limited version that didn't have the two-tone paint, which was the more mass-produced one. Now, in addition to that is my Bumblebee, which I'll pull up right here. I gave my Bumblebee the G1 toy face. I thought that was a better look. And then finally, I got this third-party part for my Optimus because Optimus's eyes in the G1 were yellow, and in the Masterpiece they were blue. This is the Takara Convoy Optimus. I guess I'll have to lift this up a little bit so you can see, but I got an insert for his eyes that was yellow.
It's good.
Okay, that's good. So I made sure that my Optimus had his eyes switched out to yellow because I just really love the G1 look. Yes?
Boba's friend gave us 1.99 pounds.
Oh, thank you, Boba's friend. Appreciate it.
He asked, is there a white Optimus Prime with a red roof?
I don't know about that. I know that there was a white Optimus Prime as the base for the G1 Ultra Magnus, and then you clipped all the other parts onto him like a big turtle shell. As far as there being a white Optimus with a red roof, I don't know exactly what the paint schemes were on the original Diaclones. My understanding is that they were, some of them were red, and there might have been a blue one. I can't remember. But it wouldn't surprise me if that paint scheme was out there.
Film School 93 says, hey, Michael, my 8-year-old son, Aiden, wanted to hear you say hello to him.
Aiden, hello. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for watching the live stream today. Appreciate you being here.
What do you think of the jump starters?
We did a very primitive video early on about the jump starters, trying to get my childhood one to flip back, onto his feet, but the wind-up mechanism had run out. I know that in the, I believe it was the Titans line that just came out about a year ago, or you can correct me if it was Headmasters. I think it was Titans. They redid the jump starters, Twin Twist and what's the other guy's name? Twin Twist and something else.
Jimbo.
And it's not Jimbo. And
now.
they looked really good. I mean, they looked great, and I regret not picking those up because they really looked solid. So I like the look of them. They were a little limited into what they could do.
Top spin.
Top spin, thank you. Top spin and twin twist.
Rebecca knows her Transformers.
She does, but I liked them. I thought they were cool looking. They were just very limited.
What they want to know what I think of Cup and do you like Cup, and is there any love for Cup?
I
don't know what that is.
I do, and unfortunately I've just been caught in a story. So
is that like being caught in a mosh?
Kinda. So
hey, there's an Anthrax reference for all you metal fans out there.
Here's my story with Cup. So I was given Cup as a kid, brand new, in '86, and had him for a while, but I didn't like the movie. Excuse me. So I had him in my toy box, didn't really play with him all that much. He was in minty condition. And then my buddy Joe had a birthday coming up, and he's a huge Transformers fan. And so this was about 10 years ago now, 7 or 8 years ago, I guess. And so I gave my childhood Cup to Joe.
That's why I know that name.
This was before I had RetroBlasting. It was before I had a channel. He's the only childhood toy that I've ever given away. But I gave him to a close friend, and I don't have any dislike of Cup as a character. I just wasn't that big a fan of the animated movie as a kid. So, if I had it to, do over again, would I give him away? Probably, because, Joe's a good friend of mine, and he would appreciate the robot. But no, I don't dislike Cup. I thought he was a cool character. He's one of the more bearable characters in the movie.
Chris Smith gave us $10.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
He says, late to the game, but have you had a chance to discuss the whole Macross, Robotech, Jetfire, Skyfire debacle?
We talked about the Chunky Monkeys, and we talked about how Jetfire was a Macross Valkyrie. We haven't talked about the lawsuit that occurred, because what ended up happening was Hasbro had licensed the Jetfire, or sorry, the Macross Valkyrie from Takatoku. I believe Bandai finally had the license at that point, but they're known as Takatoku Valkyries. And they had licensed that ahead of Harmony Gold getting the Macross animated show on American television. So then when Harmony Gold got the Macross show turned into Robotech, they found themselves in a conundrum because they couldn't actually get the toy that was tied to the show because Hasbro had already turned it into a Transformer. So then they decided, well, we're going to try through Matchbox to make a transforming toy for the Robotech toy line that action figures can go in and all that kind of stuff. Well, Hasbro decided to throw its weight around and block that as well. So that toy wasn't allowed to transform. It was all a mess. But conversely, as part of the settlement or whatever it was, Hasbro was told, hey, you guys get to distribute the toy, but you really don't need to be using him in the show because that's infringing on their copyright having Robotech. So Hasbro got to sell toys of the Veritech fighter as Jetfire, and Harmony Gold got to show it in animation, but Skyfire, as you notice, was used very sparingly, and then he kind of faded away without a lot of explanation, and that's why.
What is the sound effect of the TV show transformation?
The sound effect of the TV show transformation, I don't know if you're asking me what it actually is. I know that...
I think it's somebody going...
I know the sound is... but I don't know what that's from. I mean, I know that, you know, tauntauns are sea otters and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know where that's from. I know that the TARDIS sound is actually a house key over cello bass strings, but you've caught me on that one. I've never looked into it.
Caught in a mosh.
Right.
Do you have a Unicron figure? Also, in comparison to other 80s villains, do you think Unicron was the most formidable?
I do not have a Unicron figure, and from what I understand, the one that they made a few years ago is pretty nice, but he's also very complex in his transformation. My buddy Kyle, who I mentioned earlier, has one. As far as what's so funny?
Speaking of Anthrax, was there ever a transformer of an electric guitar?
Not that I know of. I like Unicron. I like the Orson Welles voice. I like the fact that he was this giant force out there. It is odd that they never mentioned him until that movie. You'd think with something that formidable, they would have mentioned him earlier. But that's the nature of, you know, storytelling without a plan. But no, I mean, he's got a cool voice. I'm not really sure what his objective is short of destroying the universe. He's kind of like the crystalline entity from Star Trek The Next Generation.
Have you ever read the Marvel comics, and if so, what are your thoughts, as many consider it better than the show?
I've read a few of the initial Marvel comics from issue 1 up through like issue 5 or 6. I plan on reading all of them because I promised my buddy Dan that I promised him years ago I would eventually do a video about the comic line. I haven't yet, my failing, sorry, but I will. One of the things I liked about it was its more mature take on the property, much like the G.I. Joe comic felt more mature than the cartoon, naturally. What was awkward about the initial Transformers comic is how everybody had to announce their personality. You know, I, Mirage, with my, you know, bleak outlook on life, I'm not happy about this, and I will use my illusory powers to... And it was this big expositional setup in the arc. It's on like a splash page. It's pretty funny. So some of the dialogue in the comic can be pretty stilted in that direction, trying to get everything up to speed. But it's a charming, you know, curio of 80s entertainment.
Blaster or Soundwave? Who's the best boombox transformer?
I like Soundwave better than Blaster. I don't dislike Blaster, but Blaster seemed like the way to get... It was almost like, oh, well, the boombox was really popular when it came out on the bad guy's side. We got to get a good guy boombox to even it out. Notice they never really gave us a good guy gun. You know, like there wasn't, hey, that Walther P-38 on the bad guy's side was really good. Let's get an M1 Garand transformer to fight him off. They never did that. So I'm more into purity of concept.
Is that MP10 Takara or Hasbro?
This is Takara. This is a Takara Convoy MP10, and he's in the proper scale. He's got slightly different details, and as I said earlier, I added the yellow eyes. Didn't paint them. A guy did an insert that you could do, so I replaced the part of the blue eyes with the yellow eyes to make him look more like the original toy.
Someone asks me if I played with Transformers as a little girl while listening to metal. If so, that would be awesome. Unfortunately, no, I did not, but I did play with My Little Ponies while listening to metal, so there you go. That's even cooler. I agree. Someone's Venom again. By the way, he's Venom from like Spider-Man.
Yeah,
which is also cool. You know, maybe not like satanic cool like the metal band, but anyway, I'd actually love to see some World War II Transformers.
I would love to see them too. You know, a lot of people think that Hound was a World War II Jeep, but he's actually not, because all of these vehicles were actually from the Diaclone and Microchange toy lines from Japan. They were reflective of Japanese and European car culture, and Hound is actually a Mitsubishi variant of the Willys Jeep from, I believe, the late 50s. It's not an actual Willys World War II Jeep, as a lot of people think. So yeah, I would love to see some authentic World War II Transformers. That'd be very cool.
What do you think about Masterpiece being licensed by car manufacturers? There's a rumor that Porsche is a difficult license to get, which affects Jazz and Cliffjumper.
I think that's unfortunate, because I don't think a car company has anything to lose by licensing their brand for one of the original Transformers characters. I think Transformers are universally loved around the world, as we can see by the box office for these inferior Michael Bay movies, but they do really well overseas. Everybody loves Transformers. Transformers are not racially based. They're not religiously based. They are virtually gender neutral. I really think that Porsche would do well to give their license over to do some Masterpiece characters. I think that's tragic.
This person says, I imagine you don't like G2, but might there be any Transformers you think were actually good that came out from the G2 era?
As I said earlier, I was very happy to see the G2 line come out when it came out in the early 90s, because it gave kids the opportunity to get some of the characters they didn't already have. I have nothing against the G2 line. I was talking about it with Kyle the other night, and you know, he mentioned how his Sideswipe was G2. It was the black Lamborghini Countach, which there's nothing cooler than an all-black Lamborghini Countach. Some of the color schemes for like the Dinobots and stuff are a little odd, but I don't have anything against G2. It was kind of like, you know what it was? It was a less gaudy version of Tiger Force for G.I. Joe. You know, Tiger Force gave us the opportunity to get those vehicles we never had. We just had to settle for a tiger stripe paint scheme. G2 did that in a much classier way, and I'm glad G2's out there, really.
A lot of people want to know your thoughts on the Transformers movies. I assume they mean the more recent Michael Bay films, and in particular the upcoming Bumblebee movie.
You know, the Bumblebee movie, I saw the trailer. It's indicative of how Hollywood keeps making the same mistake, and then when they finally get it right, they've missed the boat. So Bumblebee is set presumably in the 80s, it looks like. I think it's set somewhere around 84, 85, something like that. It's hard to tell from the trailer, but he is a Volkswagen Beetle, and you look at it and you go, wow, that's the best trailer for any Transformers related movie I've seen. It's the only one that gives me any hope that that's going to be a decent film. However, they're trying to tie it to the continuity of bad films. So Bumblebee still can't talk, and there are none of the other original characters in the film. So if the original Transformers movie from 2007, I think it was 2007, had been set in 1984 with all of the characters, that would have been what we had always wanted. But Hollywood doesn't want to do that. Same with the G.I. Joe movie. Oh, we've got to set it in 2010 or whatever it was. And it's like, no, you don't. Set it in 1982. That way you can justify everything you do to make these characters look the way they're supposed to look and act the way they're supposed to act. And that's what we all want, and everyone's going to enjoy it. But then they wait and wait and wait. Look at Wonder Woman right now. Wonder Woman's sequel is set in 1984. And it looks like, until we see a trailer, but the photos make it look like it's going to be a really fun movie. And they're like, yeah, we're avoiding putting Wonder Woman in the modern age. We're trying to avoid all that DCU stuff that they're trying to, you know, mess with right now and fix. So we're just going to hang out over here in the 80s. That's what we do here at RetroBlasting. We hang out here in the 80s, waiting for everything to get better out there. So yeah, I think the Bumblebee movie looks like the best live-action Transformers movie so far. That's not saying much, but it's very telling that they've finally given up on the modern crap and they're going back to 80s cars, 80s look. Yeah.
Are there any toys that you regret not getting as a child?
Are there any toys?
Transformers, I assume.
Yeah, Transformer toys that I regret not having as a child. I mean, yeah, there were Dinobots that I wanted. I always wanted Slag and Grimlock. I never had them. I always wanted... I always liked Devastator. You know, I thought he was really cool, but I never had any piece of him. I'm trying to think. Oh, there would have been... I always wanted Jazz. I never had Jazz. And Prowl and Silver Streak. All of the Autobot cars I would have loved and never had. I had Wheeljack, and I had the Minicons, and I had Optimus, and I had Jetfire. Oh, and I had Ratchet, which, you know, he's whatever. Yeah.
Ray Dalton gave us $2.
Thank you,
asks, Ray. Could Unicron have beaten Metlar, Hordak, etc.?
Could Unicron have beaten Metlar and Hordak? Yeah. Unicron could have beaten all of them handily, unless Metlar was like the Hulk and could just regenerate. You know, if Metlar had the powers of the Hulk, then he could just tear through Unicron over and over again because he's this unstoppable force that just gets more powerful the more you wail on him. But I think, all things being equal, I think Metlar's dead because Unicron would just smash him.
Did you have any of the Euro Transformers?
I did not have any of the Euro Transformers. I was already 12 when we moved to England, so I was edging out of toys at that point.
Have you seen the Incredible G2 commercials?
I have not seen the Incredible G2 commercials, no.
How come you don't have any of the current generation's Target Walmart line on the table, I guess, which now has a decent $16 Jazz and a $25 Voyager Galvatron?
I've seen those. I've seen the Jazz. I haven't seen Galvatron, but I've seen Jazz. The reason I don't have those, as I said earlier in the live stream, is because my money lately has gone towards building the studio and a few other projects related to retroblasting that I'm working on. I've been looking at them in the stores, like I looked at the Jump Starters and all those. I like them. I think the quality's great. I just haven't sprung for them.
What's your favorite Masterpiece G1 that you've gotten?
My favorite Masterpiece G1 is probably Wheeljack, because I'll put him in the camera. I mean, he's perfect in every way, and he looks like he looks identical to the Lancia when he's transformed. I mean, he is the perfect Lancia Stratos model. I love him. And then when you turn him into Wheeljack, he's perfectly articulated. He has all the details. Everything, you know, snaps tight. I think he's great. I think he's a great Masterpiece Transformer. I also really love Soundwave, but the problem with Soundwave is that his hip joints feel very fragile, and I feel like they're going to break. I've never transformed him into the tape deck. And the ones that I'm really not that wild about are the Seeker Jets, because their transformation is so complex. It takes forever to transform them to jet and back. Maybe that's also a bias in the fact that I just like the Autobots more than the Decepticons. So,
what do you think of the bootleg Transformers like Megatron 44 Magnum?
Well, this is a bootleg. When I say bootleg, oh, you're talking about the actual knockoffs of the original G1s? If that's the case, I've seen some really nice ones. I know that there's some people out there really collecting them, like, you know, Rocket Punch Army talks about the knockoffs a lot. Some of them rival the mass-produced ones. And if that's the way, like I know there's a whole set of Dinobots out there, G1 Dinobots, that's, you know, not original. If that's an affordable way to get the G1 look, it's your choice to spend your money that way. I'm always intrinsically interested in having the material from my past. So knowing that that was possibly on a Toys R Us shelf or a Circus World shelf, that's more important to me than having a knockoff. But if that's what you want and you want it minty and you've heard the quality's good, I'm not going to judge you for going in that direction.
Okay, I got one last question,
Okay.
And that is, where does your Transformers collection rate in relation to your other franchise collections in terms of affection?
Well, I didn't have many Transformers growing up, but when I did the studio, I found out that the Transformers shelf was very sparse. And I knew that was going to be a problem because I wanted, much like I wanted the core of the He-Man cast represented, the core of the Thundercats, the core of Ghostbusters, I wanted the core of Transformers represented in this studio. And I knew that meant the 1984 ARC crew, as well as the Decepticons that were on the ARC as well. So I went ahead and filled out my collection, G1 original, Takara, and pre-rub when I could get it. And I got the entire run of them. And I'll admit, now that I have them in the studio, they're one of the shelves I look at the most when I come down here, because I didn't have them growing up, most of them. And I like having the whole complete cast. So yeah, they rate pretty highly for me. I have someone here, I have Tim here, he's wanting to hand me this toy for some reason, even though I said we don't want to do the toy trade, but here, I'll take it. Oh, right. So Tim has an idea about this, since the toy trade didn't go so well. Tim has an idea regarding this that I wanted to run by everybody. He's considering having a monthly toy giveaway on the Patreon page, whereby we would randomly select a patron, and then they would, by default, win a vintage toy from the RetroBlasting studio. And then we would just send it to them. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know what you think about that, you know, through any of our channels, Facebook, Gmail.
Put some rules around it.
Right. Tim's saying he would establish some rules and guidelines, but just let us know if you think that's a good idea, if that's something that would interest you. And we'll either take it forward or roll it backwards. So I think we're at time. Are there any final questions that I didn't get to?
Well, I deleted all the questions. Not all the questions, but I keep a spreadsheet of questions.
Okay.
Because you know how I love spreadsheets. Earlier on, people were talking about the DeLorean and asking if there was a DeLorean Transformer, and several people in the comments answered, but you can speak to that if you'd like to. I thought that was a fun question.
I know that there's been some fan artwork done, but there's never been a toy of a DeLorean that transforms.
What's your favorite triple changer?
Oh, I'd have to do some homework on that. I mean, I know Astro Train is probably the most prominent, so I'd go with that one.
What's your favorite metal band? This is just my question.
My favorite metal band, whichever one Melinda likes the best is my favorite.
Edge of Sanity it is. All right.
All right, well, I guess that's time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this live stream today. We will have another live stream in 2 weeks. Thanks to all of our patrons who help us choose the topic. This is one I was looking forward to. If you have any questions, please email us at retroblasting@gmail.com. And we will see you on the next live stream, which will be chosen by all of you. So in the meantime, look forward to Chuck Norris Part 2, the finale of The Flag, and then we're also moving on to Buck Rogers in the 25th Century and The Legend of the Lone Ranger. Those are all coming up soon. So thanks again, and we will see you on the next video.